Hi everyone, the Game Piece here, and today I thought I'd give you something a little bit different. Today I'd like to give you a bit of a retrospective as far as what my experience was leveling up in Elder Scrolls Online as a new player in 2019 going into 2020. This is going to be a video detailing my experience leveling from 1 to 50 on my Dragon Knight, as well as gaining the necessary champion points to stop the scaling of gear, which would be champion point level 160. So I'm going to go into what my first impressions of the game is, how I thought it did, teaching new players certain things as far as like abilities and certain mechanics of the game, and as well as just my general impressions of the game as a whole. So let's get into it.
One thing I'd also like to note is that this video is only going to be covering the base game. It won't be covering any expansions, however I will have a separate video going into that in the future. So let's get into it.
So initially when you get started and you boot up your game, you're going to be brought to the character creation screen, which will allow you to choose from 6 different classes here and 10 different races. The Imperial, of course, is going to allow you to play on any alliance. The only thing that is gated, however, is the open world PvP, your faction in that. It doesn't matter which one you are. You can play with any other players doing dungeons, trials, whatever. The only thing that you can't do together is the open world PvP. And beyond picking a race, you will also be able to select a class when there's 6 classes in the game. However, if you are only an owner of the base game, you will have a option of 4 classes: the Dragon Knight, Sorcerer, Nightblade, or Templar, which are, pretty standard classes. It seems like you got your Knight, Mage, the Rogue, and the Healing class. Now, one thing I want to point out that I didn't know going into this game was that any class here can play any role. Any class can be a healer, a tank, or a damage dealer. It doesn't matter what you pick. If you want to be a healing thief, go ahead and pick that, or a tanking mage, you can do that as well. That is one thing that I want to hammer home because I did not know that from the beginning, and that definitely would have influenced what class I would have chosen. So your class does not determine what role you play. You can play whatever role. Yes, if you want to min-max, things are a little bit different, but if you just are looking to play the game with the class you want and the role you want, you can choose it and you can do it and you can make it work. One thing that I will say with this game too is that the character customization is pretty top-notch. You can choose different body parts to move on a slider to make different sizes, different skin colors, different heights. You can change the age of the character, the head markings, various facial features. The only thing that I'd say is a little bit lacking is the hairstyles. I do not know if there are any other ones added in the Crown Shop, but for the base game, the ones that they allow you to choose from, there isn't a whole lot here to pick from. However, with the sliders, it does allow you to create a character that is to your liking for sure. So when you're thrust into the game, you'll be level 1 starting off. It's a little bit overwhelming if I'm being honest. You don't really have a whole lot of direction as far as where to go. Depending on what race you picked, you will start off in that starting zone, and you will kind of just be set loose. You have a main quest to follow, but at least when I was doing it, it would pop up every now and again, and then it would stop, and then I would go and do a dungeon or a few more quests, and then it would pop back up again. So I don't know if there is like a time thing, or if you have to just go do another event to progress that main storyline. But at least for the base game, I wish there was a little bit more structure as far as telling you where to go and when that would be happening, because it just seemed to be a little bit random to me. Now, I do enjoy the base game story for what it was. However, just having the expansions now, I can already tell that a little bit more love probably went into these expansions, just by judging from the early story that I've experienced. But there is something good to be told here. The story is enough and worth playing through, enough for you to be satisfied as an Elder Scrolls fan, and I do think that it has some merit in playing through it, and it will be something that is worthwhile for you to do. However, the main story is not the only thing that there is to do in this game in order to level. There is plentiful zones for you to explore, which you can get through quickly thanks to the use of way shrines, which I absolutely love. I come from, my main MMO is Final Fantasy XIV, which allows you to teleport basically whenever, wherever, as long as you've been to that area before, which is exactly how Elder Scrolls Online does it. You pay a small flat fee to teleport. If you teleport rapidly, one after another, the gold fee will start to increase, but that's just something to be mindful of. It's really helpful, and I think super convenient for players to get around the world to go to any numerous zones that they want, considering there's so many and more to be added next year when the next expansion comes out for this game. Another thing I'd like to touch on is that you aren't restricted to doing any number of zones in any certain order. Thanks to the one Tamriel update that came out, any player can go into any zone that they want to go to from the get-go. If you create your character level 1, you can go teleport to the middle of the map to that way shrine and start that zone and do that zone and finish it to completion, and you should have no problems. Provided that you are able to teleport there and get there physically, and you own the appropriate DLC and expansions for that area, which is something I really enjoyed. Really enjoyed being able to go around the world and change up the atmosphere. If I got tired of one area, I could go to a different one and quest there for a little bit, and then go to a different area that just really helped mix up the game and really made it a lot less monotonous, because you weren't following a set trail or anything throughout the game. Now, I do want to state that I was leveling at the end with the champion points. I was leveling with the New Life Festival, so it did end up getting to 160 a little bit faster than I feel like is the standard rate. So your experience might be a little bit slower than me, but I did think that it was pretty quick to level up in this game as you go through the story and as you're exploring the zones. Really, you're looking at, you're going to finish 1 or 2, maybe 3 zones to get to 50, and I did a lot of dungeons after that to grind out the champion points, which really only took a few days of playing kind of on and off, grinding the veteran dungeons, and then also the New Life experience as well helped out with that too. So I definitely recommend doing your daily dungeons for leveling as well. But the 1 through 50 process was pretty straightforward. You know, there's dungeons to do, there's various delves out in the open world, there's world bosses to kill, and various things for you to group up and do with other players as well, such as battlegrounds and open world PvP too. And just, there's a lot of players running around from what I noticed as well out in the world. There's always people running around doing something, and the fact that when you level up and you get to the champion point stage, your champion points carry over to your other characters. So I think that really encourages people to try out different builds, and especially when there's experience events going on, really encourages new players to jump in, as well as old players to make new accounts and kind of run around. Really, the point I'm trying to get at is there's seemingly always someone running around in the world, and that also has a lot to do with the one Tamriel update, I believe, where the whole open world scales to your level, no matter what level you're at. If you're at 1 to 50, anywhere in between, it'll scale to your level, which is really, really nice. And I was a little bit aware of this going into it, but once you hit level 50, you will start gaining champion points. Champion points are essentially levels that you can gain beyond the level 1 through 50 base levels in the game. When you gain a champion point level, you get a point to put into a certain stat zone, which will allow you to increase your attributes even further. So that is very cool, and it allows for complexity of builds. One thing that I will state that I'm not a fan of this is that learning that these points do come into play in the open world PvP. So for instance, if you are champion point 160 here, there's like a maximum, I believe it caps out at champion point 810. So these people have 700 points on you and a ton more bonus points and attributes into certain skills and stat lines that they have built. So they're basically going to dominate you, and that's one thing I don't agree with or understand why they do it this way. It's just very strange. So I guess that's a good segue to lead into the PvE and PvP side of leveling. So for PvP, There is the battlegrounds that you can do. You get a daily bonus once per day, or you can just queue up for them anytime you would like. Or you can do the open world PvP, which, as I stated before, is a little unfair as a new player because you're going to get dominated by these people who have been playing the game for a long time and have many champion points and lots of bonuses. So that's a little frustrating. But one thing that is good is the champion points don't come into play in the actual battlegrounds, so you can play those without worrying, as long as you have gear that is able to meet the level of the other player's gear. So as if you're below level 50, it doesn't really matter, but if you are at champion point 160, I believe you want to make sure that you have a set of gear that is scaled correctly, otherwise you are going to get dominated, speaking from experience. And then now from the PvE aspect of things, you have normal dungeons that you can do, and then you have the veteran dungeons that you will unlock at level 50. I think you might get some at level 45 as well, that those start unlocking. But those are just a little bit harder dungeons, a little bit more mechanics than the normal mode. It's still a 4-man dungeon content. There's 2 DPS, a healer, and a tank running through that dungeon, and they're very open. I really enjoy the dungeons in this game compared to other MMORPGs that I've played. They have a really big sense of scale, and the bosses are all really well designed. The mobs are all really well designed. The layout's really well designed. The only thing that I am let down on is mechanics. It really seems like mechanically in this game, it's AoE, spawn ads, or that's pretty much it. I have not, full disclosure, done any trials just yet. I hit 160 and I was waiting to do that before jumping into trials, so I'm going to make another video about that. But as far as the veteran dungeons go at level 50, they don't seem too terribly difficult, which is a little bit disappointing to me. But there is more PvE for me to check out in the game, and I will be sure to make another video on that when we get through that, showcasing my first experience with the trials. But overall, I really did enjoy leveling up in this game. I do think that it could use a little bit more tutorials with explaining how to progress in the main story, making that a little bit more clear when you're going to be able to advance in the main story, as well as, you know, maybe a little bit more of a set path as far as where to begin questing, because at the beginning of the game was really when I felt the most overwhelmed. I didn't know where I should be going, what I should be doing, where I should be questing, and things like that. I also think that the crafting system could be explained a little bit better. I will do probably a separate video on that with my impressions about the crafting and the time gatiness of that as well. But if you like this video and if it helped you out, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment below about if you like ESO or if you're looking to try out a ESO in the coming year. And I will have more videos on ESO coming very shortly, so stay tuned to check that out. Thank you very much for watching.